So, following the ZANU-PF conference, which pronounced that in terms of its resolution, Emerson Mnangagwa should be allowed to go for a third term, and which also further pronounced that the process of making sure that Mnangagwa goes for a third term, which is actually packaged in the form of just extension with 2 years. We know it is an indirect way of seeking a third term, and most probably of making himself to be a life president and create the Mafidi dynasty. But I must tell you that it's not a walk in the park for Emerson Mnangagwa. Neither is it a walk in the park also for retired General Chiwenga. And having said so, the fight is still far from being over at the moment, because of course, resolution may have been pronounced. You can see that when they made pronouncement of that resolution, we didn't see the process of actually ZANU-PF critically engaging each other and voting process being made. The other faction sang loud, as actually Professor Matuku put it, and the louder they became, that was actually converted by Ziambi as a resolution. In fact, what Ziambi was reading was not penned during the ZANU-PF conference. It was penned outside the conference, which means they brought in the drunkards during the conference to sing loud, to chant 2030, so that they can read the 2030 and masquerade it as a ZANU-PF resolution that has been agreed. If you looked even the way they tried to bring this and tried to give an impression that resolution 2030 was a unanimous resolution, how do you ask, for example, Opam Chinguri, how do you ask retired General Chiwenga or any other person in front of the media, presenting on a national TV to indicate whether they object to resolution 2030 or not? You would be sane if you lift up your hand, making yourself to be the focus of the nation, as well as also increasing risk upon your life. So definitely retired General Chiwenga would not have actually handled the matter in such a manner. You have seen even the so-called dossier, which has been undermined by the faction of Mnangagwa. It was meant to be a privilege of the Presidium. It is Mnangagwa who ran with the document to the Politburo to actually invite his gang to begin to speak against retired General Chiwenga. So now, in my view, this is far from being over, and you will see, and how they have actually, by ZANU-PF making the pronouncement through Ziambi, that they were going ahead with mutilating the Constitution of Zimbabwe. This has also invited all Zimbabweans to actually put ZANU-PF of Mnangagwa under surveillance to really see on whether they are serious about this. Not only have they invited Zimbabweans to zoom into the ZANU-PF issues, they have further invited the members of the international community. That is why today you saw I covered a story of the United States of America also warning the president of Zimbabwe for extending his term of office. And also this has invited even the attention of the international media going as far as seeking knowledge, especially from the legal experts like Lovemore Matuku, to make pronunciations on this matter. Lovemore Matuku saying the 2030 term extension has no legal standing. Maybe if we're talking of a third term, you would be looking at changing the constitution. That is the path to actually achieve that. but term extension it doesn't exist. It is not part of the. It is not part of. It's not incorporated within the constitution of Zimbabwe. So now, since Mnangagwa and Chiwenga feud still continues, and Mnangagwa realized that he hasn't won. Look at what, for example, Themba Mliso is doing. Themba Mliso is still doing what he did before the conference. He is going after retired General Chiwenga. He is going after each and every person whom he suspects is working with retired General Chiwenga. For example, George Charamba, also Nick Mangwana, they are, under surveillance, or what I can call investigations are ongoing in these actually two characters. And most probably their phones are bugged and listened to by the son of Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is actually running intelligence. So that on its own tells you that Mnangagwa, at the moment, of course, he has a resolution through the conference, of which, of course, he did have last year, but we have stayed for a whole year with no action on that particular resolution. Will there be action this time around? They are actually promising that there may be some action of trying to change the constitution. At the moment, what these Ziganandas and Mnangagwa are busy doing, they are watching, listening to such programs to gauge the public feeling, following what they pronounce, testing, actually gauging the people of Zimbabwe, the anger of the people of Zimbabwe. And when they make their own judgment, of which most of the times they are always miscalculating, then they will try to implement the PPI strategy that we have talked about. I will continue to amplify more about this particular strategy, which has been exposed. Of course, Ziambi coming, trying to actually drive a narrative of Mnangagwa, and exposed that he was in fact lying. So also you can see that as much as the Mnangagwa faction is ahead, the faction of retired General Chiwenga is equally ahead. That is why when the Mnangagwa faction put something on the public domain, trying to distance itself from the narrative that would have been pushed by the faction of retired General Chiwenga, there is that quickness from the faction of retired General Chiwenga to prove the Mnangagwa faction wrong. And also look at the two leaders. Mnangagwa today was busy at UZ. Yesterday he was busy with the youths as well, and also the other vice president who was kept with a doctorate degree. I wonder whether he was able to write that thesis, or it's another gift in the form of a PhD. In Zimbabwe, especially ZANU-PF, everybody has a PhD, and the mind-boggling question is, why is the country in trouble with a lot of these PhDs, especially from the people who are running the country? So you can see that most of these PhDs are actually a charity case, so that everyone in ZANU-PF dies being called a doctor. But it's useless when those doctorates do not turn into national development. So the feud is, so Chiwenga is in Bulawayo. We are told he's going to be there for the next 3 days. To me, I'm getting the vibes of a vice president who is trying to avoid attending the activities of Emmerson Mnangagwa, or trying to be close to him, especially when he is pushing a factional agenda. He is only attending in fact, meetings of national significance. That is what we have seen happening. When it comes to meetings that are only pushing the narrow agenda of Mnangagwa factionalism, he disassociates himself with that. So you can tell the tension that existed before the ZANU-PF conference it is there, and I mean, it's obvious for everybody to see. It hasn't changed. And in my next live broadcast, you would see that there is intensification to block Emerson Mnangagwa. Everyone is speaking, so loud and clearly. And I think who has helped us to speak so loud and clearly, it is none other than the faction of retired General Chiwenga, especially through Blessed Geza. He has played a very, very pivotal role. Of course, using his intelligence, not divulging everything in terms of, for example, we saw Blessed Geza warning Gudawashe Takwere. We didn't know why Blessed Geza was warning Gudawashe Takwere. But now when Gudawashe Takwere began to crisscross the country, then it came. And also when we saw the Mnangagwa faction pushing for his profile to be lifted, then it rang some sense. Oh, that's why he was actually warning Gudawashe Takwere. The same Blessed Geza called Sengezo Chabango, that charlatan called Sengezo Chabango. And then people thought, maybe Blessed Geza. But now with the BPI, the name of Sengezo Chabango, coming so loud and clear, and the intentions of Mnangagwa in terms of using Sengezo Chabango as a fake leader of the opposition that has been created by ZANU-PF to quench a narrow agenda of one faction within ZANU-PF. It has become so clear to us. So, and now with ZANU-PF conference passing that resolution, and also the faction of Mnangagwa, or I must say the Blessed Geza revolution, also ahead in terms of arming Zimbabweans with information. That is why we see everybody up in arms, and that is why now we see even the international media getting to zoom into Zimbabwe, saying, this thing is serious. It started being actually distanced by ZANU-PF, saying, no, it's the social media frenzy and so forth. But it has become clearer and clearer that it's not a social media frenzy. And also, people may not say retired General Chiwenga was quiet during the conference, like what Themba Mliso said, and he was crushed. That is overexcitement coming from Themba Mliso. The man was not crushed. Before they could actually pass that resolution, he made a speech that is giving Emerson Mnangagwa a headache up to today. He is still trying to think, because to them, they perceive retired General Chiwenga as a dull person who cannot write a speech. So he came up with a very, very, good, the speech that resonated with the people of Zimbabwe, that got everybody talking about it. And initially, they attacked, they thought maybe it was written by the wife. Now they are thinking, no, it sounds like those speeches which were written by, George Charamba. Is it George Charamba? That is why now you see Themba Mliso used by Zwiganandas and Emerson Mnangagwa to try and test the waters. You see, all this goes to feed into this factual reality that the tensions are still loud and clear, and for everybody to actually see. This is far from being over, and anyone who is actually claiming some form of victory, I'm telling you, that person is lying or self-deceiving, because this is far. If Mnangagwa was victorious during the conference, why then are they continuing to make noise? Why is Themba Mliso continuing to actually attack certain individuals? They would have acted. If it's a matter of removing George Charamba, they would actually removed him. They would have removed Nick Mangwana and everyone whom they suspect. But Why are they still using that ideology or a theory of testing waters? Let's test so and so and see how we respond in terms of justifying himself about what we are thinking. So, and the fact that the slogan is still sung, and we see yesterday I was reporting by of this youth leader who had gathered very few people without energy. Some of them you could see they were hungry, trying to report to them back about what happened to the conference. The people were they were so discouraged. They only began to talk because the largest number of them were women who were sitting down. They only began to talk when he was speaking about women inequality when it comes to distributing food, saying men, they take most of the food and run away with it, and women remain without a food. That was also sarcastic, to speak, and it's actually ZANU PF exposing itself, how it creates problems and use that problem to actually reduce Zimbabweans into a laughing stock. So it's far from being over. If Mnangagwa had won during the conference, there would be no drama. Everyone would be tolling the line. But what we saw, the visuals that we saw before conference, are the same visuals that we are still seeing. And also the fights that we saw intensified before the conference. These are the same fights, and also the leakages that we saw before the conference is still happening up to today. So, which means it's game on. And Mnangagwa himself knows it very well that he has not won. If he had won during the conference, I can attest to, he would have stood up and actually celebrated that the conference has passed again resolution number 1 and said, I accept the resolution. But that's that statement being absent, knowing that ZANU PF, through its constitution, it made Mnangagwa to detect everything in ZANU PF. He's like a god of everybody. So him having not exercised his powers of being given that authority of a deity within ZANU PF is telling in terms of he understands what is at stake when he just does that. Already Zimbabwe is abuzz because there was also announcement of resolution number 1, and Ziambi, who is the Secretary for Legal Affairs, specifically put in that position because Mnangagwa understands that he tracks very well when it comes to his interest. That on its own, this is what has sparked what we are seeing, national reaction to say, no, this is wrong. Now we need to stand up and be on the lookout. But Mnangagwa has not confessed that, I accept. During the Robert Gabriel Mugabe, such pronunciations would be made, and Robert Gabriel Mugabe will endorse those pronunciations. He hasn't endorsed them because he understands what is at stake. Thank you very much for watching us. If you're watching us for the very first time, please do remember to press the red or black subscribe button so that next time when we beam live, you become the very first one to watch us. You can financially support this channel by pressing the join button and be part of our members who are the heartbeat of this channel. You can equally do so by pressing the thanks button and send us stars. Do remember also to follow my Facebook page. I'm posting a lot of content. There is a lot of stuff which I have to post that I cannot post on this channel. I will be posting it so soon. So make sure that you do follow that page. Let me love and leave you. Let's meet you on the other side of the live broadcast because I'll be